Surprise.
Hello and welcome to our first Australia-wide for 2016. I'm Siobhan Henu. On this week's show, luring cashed-up Chinese tourists.
Chinese tourism represents big dollars for the tourism market.
They're looking for unique experiences that give them bragging rights, as it were, where they can go back home and say, this is where I've been, you haven't been there.
Coming out and telling the team that I've got autism.
Breaking down prejudices around autism.
I'm not embarrassed about it. Why would I be embarrassed about having a higher IQ?
And built for speed.
You put him behind the wheel of a car and he's ready to race.
There's an Australian title there, so that's out of all of Australia, every driver. Hopefully I can win it.
First to Western Australia, where the small community of Yarloop is on the long and torturous journey to recovery after one of the worst bushfires in the state's history. 2/3 of its homes were destroyed and 2 people were killed when a massive blaze tore through the historic timber town in January. A small group of residents have stayed living amongst the burnt-out ruins and refusing to leave despite the hazards. And as Claire Moody reports, there are mixed views about whether to rebuild or to relocate the town.
Everything is gone. The fire has just taken everything. We're nobodies, we're homeless,
Vagabonds.
destitute people. It's quite a strange feeling. Who are we?
This is all that remains of Lois and John Harris's home of 20 years.
Come on, fellas. Afternoon tea time. Come on. This way.
The only sign of life, some pet chooks and guinea pigs, unlikely survivors living in the debris.
I'm busy, and that's sort of stopping me from having time to sit and cry buckets.
The fire killed 2 residents and destroyed most of the small rural town of Yarloop. Some believe the inferno was unstoppable. For others, more could and should have been done. There's hope a state government inquiry now underway will provide some answers.
Anybody who wants to hide anything should be asked to please explain.
As the huge clean-up continues, residents have been asked to stay clear of the town because of hazards like asbestos. But a few remain, either camped out in the ruins or living in the few houses left standing.
This is my mate's place, Matt Colebrook. He lost everything. This is Renee's place here. She lost everything as well.
Arguably, it's been just as hard for those who didn't lose their homes. Alex Jovanovic risked his life to save his.
What I've lost is the whole community. I've lost all my friends. I'm the only one residing on the block now, out of probably 30 houses.
With hundreds of people displaced, there's a desperate need to know what happens now.
I'm 6218, as we say around here, but if I can't live here, you got to say it right here and now. Yarloop will be closed down or it won't. So these people can go home and make plans.
A lot of people want to come back to Yarloop. I think there's also a significant number of people who just, their own circumstances, won't. And I just think it's too early to make that call. It is too early.
Matt Colebrook's already decided he's staying put on his burnt-out block in what used to be the town's heritage precinct.
I've been loaned a small caravan to use for as long as I need it. They've donated me barbecues. Another lady in town who's moved out, she basically bought me around a load of furniture, so I've got tables, cooking gear, chairs, chest of drawers.
An army veteran who served in Afghanistan, he's familiar with adversity and is planning to rebuild.
My heart's here. This is my home. It can get a bit depressing and get you down a little bit, but true Aussie spirit, you've got to keep your chin up and go forward. And by just walking away and leaving it as a pile of rubble, that's not going forward. It's just running away from the problem.
For surrounding dairy farmers like Joe Angie, with so much invested, there's little choice but to carry on. But the strain's been enormous.
About 8:30, 9 o'clock, it was at our doorstep. All the trees are on fire. Power poles were going up. The fire was as high as the trees.
2/3 of his pasture and fencing were destroyed.
We'll be staying here. We're going to try and rebuild. We're going to have to carry the expense of this fire. We're hoping that we'll get some assistance and some help to cope.
But not everyone's convinced that Yarloop should be reinvented. Just 4 kilometres up this train track is the Wagerup alumina refinery run by Alcoa. The company says its operations are safe, but some residents can't see the value in rebuilding a community so close to a major industrial plant.
I think Yarloop's finished as far as a town. It'll never ever be the same. Look, a few people may want to stay and rebuild, but basically it's a perfect opportunity to install a buffer zone.
A group of local activists has been fighting Alcoa for 20 years, claiming emissions and dust pose a threat to public health. In the aftermath of the fire, they've renewed their call for residents to be compensated and relocated, possibly to a new town.
It's creating a brand new town, an eco-friendly town, where both the government and Alcoa can take all their accolades. We don't care, as long as we can get the people out of harm's way.
But Alcoa says it's got no plans to extend its buffer zone to incorporate the town of Yarloop. It also won't be rebuilding the 35 rental homes it lost in the fire. Matt Colebrook and others are determined to stay, whatever the company's plans.
I'm not worried about the refinery at all, no. I researched it prior to moving into Yarloop, and I don't believe it's that big a threat as what people are making out.
Whatever happens to Yarloop, what can't be replaced is its heritage. This is all that remains of the town's old railway workshops built in 1896. They were used to service the area's once thriving timber industry.
That was the history of Yarloop. The old workshops where they built engines, and the engineering there was just out of this world really for the time. I think that was just something very, very special that we've lost.
For Lois and John Harris, it's a daily battle to come to terms with losing everything in their twilight years. Like many others, they're in limbo. They don't yet know whether to stay or go. It's a hell of a thing to happen when you're kind of...
When you're old.
You're old.
And you never ever thought that this would happen to you.
This only happens to other people, it doesn't happen to you.
I can't think where I would go if we go.
Claire Moody reporting. Australia is one of the top destinations for growing numbers of tourists from China. And as the world's biggest spending travellers, they're in high demand. The Northern Territory government, for one, is on a concerted campaign to woo wealthy Chinese. Nadia Daly reports from Darwin.
We've got heaps of life out here. We've got saltwater crocodiles, we've got freshwater crocodiles, we've got lots of birds as well. The top end here is home to 280 different species of birds, which visit here at different times of the year.
The travel habits of Chinese tourists are the stuff of legend. Cashed up and ready to travel, with an appetite for luxury and adventure.
Chinese tourism represents big dollars for the tourism market.
In the Northern Territory, tourism is the biggest employer. It's experiences like this that local operators are hoping will land them the big catch.
I don't think it'll come in a trickle, I think it'll come in more of a wave.
Tourism is now crucial to Australia's economy, nowhere more than in the Northern Territory, which is looking for growth markets to replace the slowing resources sector. And in this industry, there's no bigger prize than the deep-pocketed Chinese traveller.
Chinese in general consume 35% of the world's luxury goods.
And while luxury is still big among the growing middle class, among China's elite, tastes are changing. Bling is no longer in. Experiences like travel are now the favoured way to show off wealth.
The mass market tour bus travellers, they're so 20th century as it were. They don't decline more. What we're looking at now is high-end travellers, big spend, low volume. They're looking for unique experiences that give them bragging rights, as it were, where they can go back home and say, this is where I've been, you haven't been there.
I think mild adventure is probably the preferred option. They're more get in, get out type tourists. One of the options that we have here is our runway strip and our helicopter landing pad out the front of the lodge, which is a great option because that way they can quickly get in or immerse themselves.
Australia is at the top of the travel list for high net wealth Chinese, but until now the territory has been off their radar, with only 1% of Chinese travellers who visit Australia making their way to the NT.
Getting into Asia, particularly into China, hasn't been successful to date.
The territory could be doing more to market to China. I think we need to be more strategic about who we attract from China to Darwin. There is a larger mass market, which is also very different from the high-end market, which is a more sophisticated market looking for a much more unique experience or opportunity and more exposed to the types of products that we have in the Northern Territory.
Don't look back to the things you never have. Don't say never.
The Northern Territory government has been pumping money into marketing the territory, hosting high-end travel agents in Darwin. According to the government's own tourism body, overall tourism numbers, particularly international numbers, have been in steady decline for 15 years. So the goal is to turn that around, and they've set an ambitious target to more than double the number of Chinese tourists in the next 4 years.
Northern Territory attracts 14,000 Chinese travellers per annum from China. And in the Tourism Vision 2020 plan, the Northern Territory government are looking at work together to grow this number to 30,000 per annum. And niche and high-end is one of the focus in this strategic plan.
Big ambitions, but what will it take to meet them?
Certainly the language barrier is one of the biggest hurdles. So in China, only a smaller proportion of the population, around about 2%, actually speak English.
So unique.
Infrastructure is a really big challenge for Darwin moving into the future too. Getting to Darwin can be quite expensive. There is currently no direct flight from China to Darwin, so if you're travelling from China directly, you'd need to go through Singapore and then come to Darwin.
I've just got back from a trip to China, talking to a couple of different airlines about opportunities around flying into the Northern Territory, particularly Darwin.
In the Northern Territory, tourism is so important, the head of government also holds the title Tourism Minister, seeking big dollars to grow the sector.
We have a range of Asian, but particularly Chinese investors who want to invest in tourist accommodation and tourism product themselves.
But these investors we spoke to were lukewarm on the prospect.
一个是投资，然后就是再一个就是投资能带来我们移民这样的，就说这个政策呢，如果有一些优惠或者倾斜的话，我相信一大部分中国的一些现在有这种需求的人都会过来。
The way Lisa Goodhand sees it, tourism businesses like hers should take the reins to turn the low numbers around and get a slice of this booming market.
It's really up to business to get involved. You know, the government can bring the agents to our doorstep, but if business doesn't get active and you know, take advice and follow up on all of those connections that have been made, then they're really not going to benefit from it.
Nadia Daly in Darwin. It's a charity set up by people with autism for people with autism, but it's changing attitudes at the same time. The I Can network is changing the way educators and employers treat those with autism, and it's providing them with better opportunities. From Melbourne, Cheryl Hall reports.
First task was analysing the patterns on my socks. You can see the socks are pulled right up, the shirt's tucked in, the top button's done up. And then that comb over without one hair out of place. And I think it shows you that men are from Mars with my brother Stephen, women are from Venus with my sister Marion, and then Chris, definitely autistic people are from Pluto. I was a character.
Chris Varney has since embraced his differences and is trying to help others on the spectrum do the same. He's created the ICANN network to try to change the way schools and employers treat young people with autism.
1, 2, 3. Oh, amazing! You did it!
It's exactly what he learned from his mum.
I set out to deliberately create a network around him. And what I learned in a very short period of time is that the community, general public can judge you, and they can also send up these beautiful offerings your way.
I'll take this better.
Chris Varney wants his ICANN network to do the same thing in schools.
It's up above my door for a reason. I don't know if you'll get it back, Jordan.
Mary Mead Catholic College in Melbourne's north was the first school to take on the program 18 months ago. Next year, more than 10 schools will be involved. At Mary Mead, it started with Jordan Woolnoff standing up and telling his class he had Asperger's.
I just basically thought it's time to let everyone know instead of keeping it in, because when you keep it in, it's like people just keep on bullying you, and then when you let it out, people start to realise, oh yeah, I shouldn't bully him, now I understand.
If we can use the positive language and a strengths-based approach for our children, whatever their learning needs, then that's going to make a difference. And it's definitely made a difference for individuals in our school here in a very short space of time.
And I saw this documentary where they took tons of inspiration from Star Wars, 2001.
The network brings together students on the spectrum with a mentor who also has autism. It gives them an opportunity to talk about their problems and helps them feel more accepted.
Around the time I actually got into high school and the ICANN program started, I actually met a lot of new friends, especially Lucas over here, and a lot of the people here. We all became really good friends. We're all really nice to each other, and it's been great.
We start talking about strategies we can use to help us overcome some of our issues, like if we're getting anxious or if we're getting a little bit too angered.
Well, it's helped me with my depression and anxiety a lot. I used to be a nervous wreck when I came here.
Most people with autism are unemployed, only 42% work. The ICANN network wants to change that and is going into workplaces to convince employers to take another look at people on the spectrum.
Coming out and telling the team that I've got autism, it's just the way it is, has actually been more beneficial than it has. I'm not embarrassed about it. Why would I be embarrassed about having I won't get there. Higher IQ,
So that's like the facilitating.
Paul McAuliffe was until recently an aircraft engineer.
I was actually known for the person who creates a spreadsheet for everything. So every time I needed to do something, I would make a system to do it for me, and then I would do it in a tenth of the time that someone else would do it. As autism becomes more well known and the negative stereotypes start going away, then yeah, I think businesses are becoming more open to accepting more diverse range of people.
In your kind of corporate workplaces.
And that's what Chris Varney is trying to drive home when he goes into workplaces to speak to managers and employers.
Our Chief Operating Officer, who we call Director of ICANN Central, he's doing a PhD on curing yellow fever. James Ong, he's amazing. He got the top medal at Monash. This is a young man who, when he was a young boy, had people that said, no, let's put you in a special school.
What happens to the mean when you've got skewed data?
Like James Ong, Penny Robinson has also overcome a lot of self-doubt to become an assistant lecturer at the Monash Medical School.
How do you calculate the mean? You said it's the average.
She's also an ambassador for the ICANN network, which was recently launched in Melbourne. People like James Ong and Penny Robinson say they owe their success to the support of others around them. The ICANN network is not a government-funded program designed by experts. It's come from a group of people on the spectrum helping each other.
And the main idea is to transport these little balls from here to here. 5 years ago I looked on the web and I found a video of Akiyuki's modules. So what I did, actually reverse engineers this module. And it was the timing was the main issue. Just to turn this crate and to get it to run like that was pretty hard, because everything has to be in sync, in a specific order in terms of how it works. Because I really want to learn how to, you know, build things, machines, and, you know, how they work and all that stuff. And, you know, maybe change the world in terms of how we do simple tasks like, you know, household work and all that stuff.
And so thank you for tonight. Where we go from here...
Chris Varney believes anything is possible as long as you have the right support.
Yeah, I haven't changed a bit. I still have these quirky things. I think as I got older, I learned, oh, okay, I'm probably not helping myself out as much by doing things this way. And then this wonderful moment happens when you get older and you kind of get to embrace your quirks.
Cheryl Hall in Melbourne. It takes a certain kind of mettle to make it in the motorsport scene, and 13-year-old Queenslander Ardie Jonic is proving he's got it on speedway tracks around the country. But he's not the youngest to cut it in this highly competitive sport. Donna Field joined Team Jonic in the lead up to the Australian Championships.
Ardie Jonic's name has a certain star quality, and kitted up in his racing strip, he looks the part. He may be pint-sized and shy, but there's a steely determination in this boy that's seen him take the Speedway circuit by storm.
This season I've been doing really good. I've been winning most of my races, and yeah, it's real good.
At his grandparents' Ipswich property, the 13-year-old takes every opportunity to put his three-cylinder charade through its paces. The car's been built by his mechanic grandfather Lubo Jonic from spare parts, but the slick blue machine doesn't miss a beat on the muddy backyard track. When Lubo Jonic met his wife Surelle many years ago, he was driving a race car too, but he sold it to buy her an engagement ring. Little did they know, decades on, they'd be part of Team Ardie.
He has had a lot of practice, I know, because when he was small I'd be in the car next to him because he wasn't allowed to drive around the backyard without someone in, and it was always me because my husband was too busy.
When he was a young baby, we put him in an electric car. He used to drive around the yard. He's really good at it. I couldn't believe how good he was at it. So then we put him in a go-kart, and he's doing really well at that around the yard.
Then there were the wrecks from his grandfather's towing business. The youngster could hardly see over the dash, but he threw them around the yard.
Keep going. Keep coming. Turn a bit to the right.
There's no time for hooning now. The pressure's on to get ready for the Australian Junior Speedway Championship.
How do you think that car was?
Ardie Jonic is at the top of the points table for every division going into the race meeting in Tasmania.
Did it feel like the air was clogging up and anything?
And he and his team are typically tight.
Yeah. Heaps of power?
Yeah, it's got heaps of power.
No miss at all?
It's everything. If they weren't here, I couldn't really do anything because my granddad fixes the car, makes it look good, tunes it, and makes it go fast on the track.
Very determined. You put him behind the wheel of a car and he's ready to race.
There's an Australian title there, so that's out of all of Australia, every driver. Whoever goes down there, I'm going against, and hopefully I can win it. I don't know if I can because there's a lot of good drivers down there though. It's a bit dirty from this race now.
And they're up to 4 years older, but his nana's not worried.
Not at all, no. Like he says, he's got this.
Race day at Tasmania's Carrick Speedway, and the trackside crowd is building. Jonic waits with his dad. It's the first race the single father has been able to get to because of work. Despite a massive points lead, Jonic will be starting from scratch. He needs to qualify to even make the main event.
The 51 car on the inside is that of Ardie Jonic as he moves down the backstretch from Queensland, the fourth highest qualifier at this point.
Lap after lap at speeds of 90 kilometres per hour, Jonic drives with precision and skill.
Down the back straight the last time, there's two car lengths now separating them.
Jonic qualifies easily.
First across the line, Harry Ross, Ardie Jonic second. Third place
I'm not sure about his, but Dad's a pretty shot watching up there, it's nerve-wracking, it is.
How was the car going? Pushing a bit, was it?
Yeah, it was pushing
about.
It's a long wait until the final. Everything is checked and checked again.
If we didn't do the tyre pressures, the tyre pressure could go right down and then the tyre would roll off the rim and then I'd roll over.
And then it's time. Jonic drives hard from the start.
The margin's .201. Ardie Jonic is 0.9 of a second behind but closing.
It's a stop-start affair as competitors come unstuck, but the tussle at the front isn't for the faint-hearted.
Jonic goes into second place.
The rough pass sees him penalised, costing him 2 positions and possibly the race.
Just a bit of a mistake. I went into the corner a bit too fast, locked up the brakes and slid into him. What are you doing?
The battle for third and fourth is starting to intensify.
As the finish draws closer, Jonic steps up the pressure.
A blanket go! Jonic and Atkins and Manny Smith across the line together. Ardie Jonic is third. It's a dead heat for fourth.
But the result doesn't stand for long. 2 of the top 5 are disqualified for non-regulation cars, leaving Jonic as the second fastest junior in the country.
Yeah, I'd like to thank my granddad, everybody who comes out.
Remarkably, Victorian 12-year-old Todd Atkins is first, the youngest ever winner.
Did the best I could with a 3-cylinder. Next year I'll be in a 4-cylinder, hopefully, and going a bit harder.
Down at me, a big smile.
Ardie Jonic's new silverware is almost as big as him. It'll take pride of place in the Ipswich workshop. But if he has his way, there'll be even bigger trophies to come.
Maybe next year, number 1.
Donnafield in Brisbane. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this week's show, and remember you can catch any of our stories again on iView or on our website. We look forward to seeing you again for another episode of Australia Wide.